Hi everyone, this is screencast number 2. In this screencast I'm going to have a look at the following question. It's also one of those questions from the study guide for the Magento developer certification. The question is add a new front-end route and create an index controller and an index action that set the return value um, of this get full action name to response body. Um, okay, let's get started. Let's create, just clean up some windows here, clean this as well. Let's start by creating a module using our little utility N98 mage run. So we're going to do dev module create. Yep, that's the one. And I'm just going to say add all. Um, and then the module name is going to be full action name. Yeah, just let's call it full action. Um, and I'm going to put it in the local code pool. There we go. Disable cache. And then let's have a look at system modules list. Maybe this modules list. There we go. Full action. Great. So it's there. That's good. So we can start writing some code. Let's just open up here and refresh that. And we're going to be looking at full action. When we're going to create routes in Magento, again, this ties into Magento's routers, which are looped through by the front controller. It's again important that you put them in the right area. Basically, Magento uses two routers, the admin router and the standard router. The admin router actually inherits from the standard router, and the standard router has a model collect routes, I think. Mage core controller. For instance, yeah. So yeah, there we go. Collect routes, and it looks in the config area for routers. So that config area is important to set that correctly. So I think it's a little bit confusing because when I think of routers, I think of Magento's those router classes that are used to match a request. But yeah, that's what they call. That's what you call them in config. So in this case, we're going to be looking at front end. We're going to add a route as a node, and then we have to put a little placeholder here for our module to kind of like distinguish between other routes, because all of this config, of course, in the end gets merged. So under the routers node, Magento will have all the routes. You can have a look at this actually if you just run config, and then I think it's dump, and then if you were to say front end routers, using config dump is quite nice because it allows you to have a look at the completely merged configuration using XPath, which is nice. And here you can see all of the nodes that are underneath the routers one, right? So here's routers, and our one will also end up there. So let's just finish it up. So routers, and then what you need to say is use, and then this is going to be the standard router because we're going to create a front end router. That's just kind of how it works. The standard router is this one. Then again, the admin router also inherits from the standard, but it's the one that collects these routes. So yeah, it's the standard one. that's where it's going to look, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, let me have a look at this. What's that? mr config dump, and then there's something about default web routers, I think. There we go. So those ones are loaded by the front controller. Or that's where the standards come from. That's this code. So you're going to use this code. So then Magento knows that's it, which class to instantiate, and it's going to load it with the area. So that's what we're seeing right here. It will instantiate this particular class and get the node for front end routers. So it will then go and loop through all of these to match a front name to a module. I'll show you that in a sec. Let me just see if I see. So we'll loop through all of these actually. Each one of these will go through, and they will all use standard, and then it will try to have a front name that matches to a module. So in our case, it's not easy. It takes a while to get your head around this, but once you kind of get it, it's okay. The way you have to put in the XML, it's just try to copy paste from other modules and from core modules, but it's kind of nice if you really understand what's happening under the hood. And I mean, that's always the case with Magento development. It's nice if you know what's kind of going on. You don't have to know every line of code in the core, but just kind of have an idea in your head while you're writing code how this all ties together and how it retrieves values from the configuration. So in our case, we're going to use the standard router, and then you have to pass it args. That's just the way it is. And then you have to give it a module, and that would then be, in our case, this module. So that would be redbox. What did I call it again? Full action. There we go. And then the front name. This is probably the most important part, the one that you are most interested in. So we're going to create a new front name. So let's call this just full action. And this is the thing that this is the name that Magento will match. It will try to find a module based on this front name. It will try to find the module, and then once it's in the module, it can start getting the controllers. So let's go back here. If we would say here, what's it again? Full action. It's going to give us a 404, and that makes kind of sense, even though if I go into configuration now and I would look at routers all the way down at the bottom, there we go, there's our one, and something is not right here. Yeah, we're missing our entry. So it needs to have a placeholder node. Whatever it doesn't really matter what name you give this. Just try to be consistent, and but it needs to have. So here we'll need a use standard. Where did that end up? Okay, and then args, and then module and front name. Oh, there it is. Oops. Yeah, but that needs to go in this node as well. So if I were to then rerun this, it's going to look a bit better. So we'll have our unique node that defines our route, tells it which router should collect it, which would be the standard, and that maps to, if I just go back here, that maps to this one. So this class will be instantiated. Its collect routes will be called by the front controller, and then it gets passed in the area, which then ties back to this node. I know it's not easy, but yeah, that's kind of how it all ties in together. So now we have this. There shouldn't be no reason except for the fact that the standard router cannot match a controller to this yet because we haven't created a controller. So Magento will basically try to match it to this. It will say, okay, I've got a front name. Can I find a module? Yes, I found the module. Now in that module, I'm looking for an index controller, and in that index controller, I'm looking for an index action. If you leave these things out, Magento will just fill them up by default to set them to index. But we have a module, we have a front name, and we have a module, but we don't have an index controller. So as soon as we add that, let's do that here. Let's just create a new folder, and it's going to be little C controllers. Things that can be instantiated via the class loader will have uppercase, but controllers aren't auto-loaded. They are instantiated by is it the root or the front controller? It's the router actually. The router will instantiate it and will actually call new on it. So there is no autoloader that kicks in and takes a class and then replaces the underscores with forward slashes, puts PHP at the end, and includes the file and what have you. So in here we will create a file, and it will be index controller. That's what you have. That's convention. That's how you have to call it. Otherwise, it will not be picked up again. So the class will be so full action, and then we'll have a index controller. And what you need to extend, this is quite important because this class comes with so much functionality that you need, is Magento controller front action, which is the action control that you should use on the front end. So all the front end routes should use this one. If you kind of look at the how it, so a lot of the controllers subclass this one. There you go. It actually inherits from the main, which is Variant Action, which has got the bulk of the functionality. The actual front action isn't that much code. It does something in the post dispatch, and I mean, yeah, it's not a big piece of code, but if you're looking at the variant front, there we go. There is a lot of stuff there. Okay, so let's just close this down. So now that we got that, the only thing we really have to do is create that public function, and I've done this a lot of times that I forget to add this. So action, if you don't add it, it's not going to find it. Let's just see if everything is working. It will not work again. Won't pick it up. So as soon as I put in action here, and sometimes when you click, you tend to forget putting that there. It doesn't work. So now there we go. So we got a controller, we got an action. So what else do we have to do here? And set the return value of this full action name to the response body. So that's kind of, again, that's if you get to know the API, the Magento API, you do a lot of coding. You start to know which classes. So you need to get the request. So the request is kind of reps. Sorry, the response. What am I saying here? Response, and on the response you can set the body, and it's basically the front controller that will take the response object and flush it. It will call get response, send response. But here we're going to set the body. And we're going to just say get full action name. You could, yeah, there we go. And that's basically all we need to do. There we go. So here is our full action name. Just notice that it's not the front name, right? It's not full action underscore index. This is the name of that node that we used. It's an important thing to kind of think about whenever you're writing layout handle instructions, because this will be used as a layout handle as well. That it uses this and not this. So again, every now and then you forget this, or you put it wrong and then it doesn't work and you can't figure out why. That's again one of those little tricky things. You should remember that it uses the actual node, the XML node. Okay, this kind of looks a bit boring. It would be nicer if we just made it use Magento layout system. What Magento layout system does, or you can actually call it from the controller, is it will fill up that body, will instantiate a whole bunch of blocks and then kick off in a sort of like all these blocks are related. They have children, and those children have children, and what have you. So that all builds a big chunk of HTML, gets appended to the body or set to the body, and then eventually the front controller flashes that output. So core controller variant front. There we go. So yeah, if you look here, dispatch. So all the way at the end, once our request was dispatched, the routers have done their work. At that point, this is where the response, where the front controller actually sends back the HTML or whatever is sent back, the response. There's some couple of interesting events around here that you can subscribe to. But okay, so now we got that. Let's just use the layout system. So the basic things you would do is just load layout and this render layout. Okay. If you add that to any controller, you'll see some output. Yep, there we go, and then there we go. So we're not seeing anything here. We're seeing just a blank page with no content. So the way to do this, and you'll see this all over in Magento, is between those two calls you have a layout system that's been initialized. All the blocks have been instantiated and you can work with them. So one of the blocks we want to work with is the content block. So get block content, and we want to add something to that block. Now the way this works is content is a core text list block. That means you can just add children blocks to this, and their to_HTML method will be called. So if we just create a little block, full action name block, and we'll go through, you always have to go through the layout to create a block, because that's how it works. That's the factory for creating a block. And we'll create a core text block, which is a nice little block we can use. Let's just set the text to this get full action name. Yeah, let's do that, and then we'll just append that block. So full action block, we'll append it to the content. So now things should get rid of this. There we go. Things should look a bit nicer. Get layout. No, that's not right. Where am I doing that? Load layout. No, this just has to be $this. You can get it through Mage as well, but and this has to be like this. But on a controller you can directly access it. So that should solve the problem. There we go. There is our full action name, which is nice. And now what you could do, a block has a couple of the base, the core Mage core block abstract has a couple of nice functions. One of them is set frame. What's it again? I always forget. Set frame tags. Not 100% sure, but let's try this. See what does. If that actually does something. Yeah, there we go. So you can kind of like frame it in tags. Quite nice. So just set frame tags, and it will, yeah, surround the whatever you said in the whatever comes out of the two HTML with these tags, which is quite nice. So yeah, we're seeing this here. So up till now, what we've done is basically work with our own root, our own front name. Now, when you create that front name, and I didn't tell this before, when you actually decide on a front name, it's good to see if that front name isn't already taken. So you could say just dump front end. If you're looking on, I mean, if you're not doing admin HTML stuff, but you're doing front end stuff, routers, and then if I were to grab for a front name, there we go. So these are all the front names that I used in standard 1.7. So our one is all the way down there. Now imagine that we kind of wanted to add our functionality onto another root, onto another front name. Let's say we wanted to put this under, let's see, I don't know, anything else, contacts. Where's contacts? Disappeared. Bizarre. I was playing around with this before, so maybe I've broken something. But it should still be there. Am I missing it here? So it would be front name, contacts. Nope, it's gone. How weird. It's a config routers. Yeah, it's still there. Front end, routers, contacts, use standard. That's strange. So if I get app Etsy modules, did I delete the contacts? No, it should be in all contacts. Here it is. Yet when I do routers contacts, oh, there we go. What am I missing here? Oh, there it is. Gosh, I'm going blind. Anyway, so yeah, so if you kind of want to add it to that root, or if you did it by accident, I mean, imagine doing this. So full action name, if you added this, if you said contacts, what will happen is that your one, okay, let me just show you what the difference would be. Contacts, this is how contacts normally looks. I'll get a little contact form. But if I were to say here contacts, what's gonna happen is my one's gonna win. Well, my one's gonna win. What basically happens here is that you still see the output of the contacts, but that's just because of the fact that layout XML is still loaded for this handle, for this full action name. But the actual contacts method, so contacts, so the index method, if we were to look at contacts, is not being called anymore. I could put a big fat die statement there, and right here, and you wouldn't see it in contacts. It will not be called. See, it's not, this function is not entered anymore. So and that's because what you're seeing still here, and we'll fix that in a second. But our module wins, but not in a good way, in a pretty bad way, because it kind of just this the normal contacts controller, index controller, is not reachable anymore at all. So we would be able to say public function foobar and die here. It's not this function would not be reachable anymore. So that would be foo contacts index foobar. It's not there. You can't call it, and this is not really what you want. You kind of want to fall back to another controller and kind of be able to say, well, use my controller before another controller, but if I cannot find a certain action, then I want to use, I want to fall back to another controller. The reason why our one wins here, or the last one wins, the new module that I added, if you were to look at, just grab, just say contacts, let's just say after and before. So our one wins is here with contacts, and that one is here with contacts. That's just the way that the router collects the routes. There's only one in that array of front names versus modules. This one is added first. So in the array, the key will be contacts, and then this one will be added. But then as it goes through all the list, the whole list here, it will actually just override, because that's how arrays work. If you set the key to the same thing but you update the value, then this one will be saved. So this is really not what you want. And Magento has just get rid of all these changes I've done here. Has a quite a nice way to do this, and that is you kind of have to look at this node is already there, and that one says use contacts. So what we're going to do, and that's how Magento config merging works, is we're going to add in our config, we're going to add that node and kind of work on that, add stuff to that. So it's going to be contacts as well. And then one of the things, so you don't have to say use standard, because that's already there. That's how Magento does config merging. But what we are going to add is a new node underneath here, which wasn't there yet, and that's modules. And in here, in our modules, we'll have our own little placeholder, and just this will make sense in a second. Mage contacts, and then this will be full action. There we go. So if I were to look now under contacts, as you can see, there's only one contacts node under routers, front-end routers, and everything's kind of merged inside here. So it still says use the standard one. Then it's got args, and what I did wrong here is that stuff needs to go in args. Yep, that's how it works. That goes here. There we go. So let's run this again. Yeah, that's better. So in the arguments, this is the module, but the nice thing of how this works is that you can add this modules node to it, and you can give it instructions and say, well, use my module before this one, and this one is added here. Okay, there's also an after, but let's just use the before for now. So basically, what that will do is that will use our module first to look for a controller and an action. So in the case of contacts index, it will go through the one we added here. Yeah, this one will be added here. This one will be entered not the one on the CMS controller. But if there would be any sort of other functionality on the CMS controller, so maybe I shouldn't have gotten rid of this, but just quickly write it again and then die here, then we could still access that functionality or those actions. So if I were to say index foobar, it's not going to find it on our what's going on here? Haha, of course, as per usual. There we go. So it still finds it on the original controller. So that's really nice for us to kind of add our functionality under a certain front name, but make sure that that the behavior on the original one or another module that's matched or that's looked in for matching controller and action is still reachable. So really, yeah, that's kind of how it works. It's again a bit of a weird syntax, and you have to get your head around it. But if you write it like 10 times, you won't forget. But it's basically what you need to know is put it under. Make sure you choose the node which has the front name, and with tools like Major Run, it just becomes a little bit easier to visualize this and to see what does the merged config look like, which is quite nice seeing it in this way, because in Magento all the config is kind of it's contained within a module, so you don't always have an overview of how all of that stuff gets merged. So yeah, that's the way to do that, to get onto a root or front name that already exists. You could do the same with after, which in case your one would lose against this one if there was the same controller in the same action, and I'll show you that that's the case. That is the case right now. You'll see it's still the same, but we are missing our what we're generating in our index. That stuff is gone, and that's just because of what we changed here. If we say before, then our one wins again, and you'll see our output. Now the reason, there we go, there's our output. The reason why you're seeing this, and this is really confusing, you're thinking that there is still that old controllers or the actual contact controllers is still hit the index action. That's just because of how Magento layout works. When you load the layout, and one of the layout handles that's added is the full action name. And in this case, that's still the same. Our full action name didn't change, so the one that all the layout fragments that are added by the Mage contacts module are still going to be added to the layout, and they're going to be rendered. So a way to kind of like to get rid of this would be not to use the load layout method, which is basically a method on the variant action, is to kind of say, do it ourselves and say, okay, this get layout, and then we would get the update that's like an object that is responsible for getting layout updates, and it works via handles, and we would just add the default handle. The default handle is the handle that's loaded on every page, and it renders. It's used mostly by the Mage page module that adds structural blocks such as header and content, left, right, footer, these things. So it's not handles, I think it's handle at handle, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So that's the default one. So that we have a handle, but then we still have to load the layout fragments for that handle. So that will be load layout updates. So once that's done, that's great. Then we have to do something which is called generate the layout XML. That just does things like if certain blocks are removed, it generates I think it's called disable attributes on that XML, so they don't get rendered in the next function, which is generate blocks. Just generate blocks. There we go. And at this point, we kind of have the same thing that we would have done in load layout, but just trying to make sure the normal full action name is not used as a handle. So if we would look at this again, you'll see great, actually worked, and you can also now see for sure that the CMS controller is the contacts controller index action is not called in any way. So yeah, there we go. Great. We can add any other handle if we want. We could just add the handle that's also it's in the page page.xml all the way at the bottom. There's a couple of nice handles here that you can use instead of setting the template and stuff. It's kind of prefer using these. So if we were to say, okay, I want one column, that's page, one column, that's the handle, and we would be able to say page, one column, add that here, and we would get a nice one column layout on our page. And there we go. So that's a small exercise, but maybe a lot to talk about. So yeah, Magento, again, creating your own route, creating your front name, done in config, and Magento has a really nice way of having some sort of module precedence. So you can add your module before another one, so your controller and action will win, or add it after if you're kind of overloading another controller. But the point being is that by just using the same node and the way that Magento configuration merges, you can get to that front name. Okay, that's it. I hope to do another screencast soon. See you guys. Bye bye.